Well, hello, nurses, and welcome to Nurses Outside the Box. We're here with a phenomenal nurse. Again, it's actually only the second interview of 2021. We're in a second season already, but it's Dr. Celia McIntosh is with us today. And I just want to say welcome first, Celia. It's so wonderful to have you here.
Thank you. I'm very honored to be a part of your podcast. Thank you.
Yeah, well, you have an amazing, I was reading your bio and then talking a little before. It's amazing what you're doing. So I'm just going to say a little bit and then let's just jump right in, okay? But she is the president of the Rochester Regional Coalition Against Human Trafficking. You will hear that word a lot, and I love that. A nurse practitioner in the Neuroscience Center at Rochester Regional Health in Rochester, New York. And she's also a family nurse practitioner, like I said. She's a leader, also really into human trafficking. And you've done so much. If I read your bio, you presented Human Trafficking 101 for emergency medical providers. You also presented human trafficking globally, locally, and its impact on human rights. I love that at the United Nations Association of Rochester, and also been involved in sex trafficking education as well. You really have a heart for ending human trafficking and becoming a voice for policy and a social change in the fight against human trafficking. And this is pretty unique. I will tell you that in the interviews that I've done over the last year that I started this podcast, this has been something that has come up. So I'm curious. I also would love to kind of start this interview and asking you, like, how did this come to be? What made your passion for human trafficking spike? What was that?
So I was actually, so I have a love for law and nursing, and I thought that I would bridge that gap by doing forensic nurse examiner kits. Patients that were brought to the hospital because they've been raped. I would do the evidence collection. And after doing that for about a year, I just didn't feel like I was helping those patients. I just felt like I went in, I saw them one time, there was no continuity of care. So I decided that I was going to stop doing that because maybe I was getting some of that vicarious trauma. So as I was walking into Rochester General Hospital, where I work, the Rochester Regional Coalition Against Human Trafficking, they had a table and there were many members sitting there, and I saw some posters, and I just stepped over and walked over to the table and asked them what exactly human trafficking was. And once they told me, I was in awe because I was like, I did not know that this is something that actually happened to individuals, or that someone could really manipulate you and take advantage of people and turn a profit. So I really, from that point, just started going to meetings, doing my own research, essentially, to find out more about human trafficking. And during that research, what I found out was that 88% of victims actually come in contact with healthcare providers, but they were often underrecognized. And that was actually the same year that Laura Letter and her colleague did a landmark study that they actually talked to about 106 survivors who had been in contact with healthcare providers and were not recognized. So that was the impetus for me to start getting involved, because I had not had this education in any school of nursing that I had been in. And I felt like if I didn't know anything about it, and I've been a nurse for over 11 years at that point, then my colleagues didn't know. So I looked at this as an avenue to really educate others, especially in the healthcare field, about the issue.
Wow, that is amazing, and I love that, and it is such an important work. I mean, I totally see that, right? Because that recognition is so important. Do you think there's an evolvement of that? Do you think people are getting better at recognizing than what it's been in the past?
Yeah, I actually think so, because there has been a lot of legislation since that time. There has been a lot of education programs developed since that time. So even here in Rochester, there was a legislation that was passed in 2017 that basically said hospital organizations need to have policies, procedures, and protocols in place for essentially all areas of where individuals seek care, like whether that's OBGYN, whether that's primary care, all those different areas needed to have these policies and procedures so that they can recognize, treat, and refer individuals. So I think, especially here in Rochester, the big push has been the fact that there's legislation. So that is what the change is. And even here at the hospital I work in, we actually just rolled out a full protocol education with with resources as well. And I was the expert on that, the subject matter expert on that. So we were able to do that. It took us a year, but we were able to roll that process out. And now this is embedded into our electronic medical record, and it's in all 5 of our hospital systems. So I think that individuals are getting better because the education is there and people are knowing that this is more of a problem now. But at the same time, I do feel like we do have some roadblocks in terms of educating individuals, because oftentimes if it doesn't happen in your backyard, people don't really, they don't come in contact with it, then they don't think it exists. So even here, like I said, in Rochester, we have to continually educate people that it does exist, and that, there's different forms. It's not like taken where someone's going to snatch you off the street. Oftentimes, someone's, exploiting your vulnerabilities. So if you're homeless, if you have mental health illness, if you, child abuse has been said to be the #1 predictor of human trafficking. Individuals that have been in the foster care system have been said to be at higher risk. So, I mean, human trafficking is hugely relationship based. And oftentimes that's how traffickers, find their, these individuals and exploit the vulnerability. So to your point, I think things are getting better in terms of increased awareness, education, but I think there's still a lot of work to do because there's such a demand.
Yeah, no, I absolutely see that. Are there a lot of nurses involved like you, or are you one of the rare people?
Well, you know what? I honestly, in my when I started in the coalition, I think there were initially 1 or 2 nurses, but not many of them have been really involved per se. So I think a lot of people have joined like after, maybe they've met me at maybe some of the different presentations that I've done, that they say, oh, wow, we need to get involved with this. How do we develop our protocols? Our hospitals are wanting us to do something with this, so they look to me to kind of help them, set up, whether it's setting up their protocols, whether it's just educating them. So I think, once people see that this is still going, what the risk factors are, that human trafficking doesn't discriminate, that there will be more individuals involved. But it's just a matter of, oftentimes it's just them having that awakening and saying, oh my God, I didn't know this existed. Let me find out more about it.
Yeah. No, and I love that about you. And I'd love to hear a little more about your story as well, because you are absolutely also a nurse practitioner, right? And this has not been something that you've done for 20 years. And I love for nurses to know that, because I think sometimes as nurses, we think we need a lot more stuff to do some of these extraordinary things, and we don't necessarily do it. So tell us, I would love to hear a little bit more about your story and where you're coming from as a nurse.
So actually, I started my career as a home health aide, and I did that for about a week. Then I actually got into a car accident, so that's why that was kind of short-lived after that. So then I went back and I became a certified nurse's assistant, and I worked that for quite some time while I was also owning my own daycare as I was going to nursing school for a few years. And I graduated from MCC. Coming out of college, I decided that I wanted to work in open heart ICU, just because it was different. It was hard, and I figured if I can do the hard things, then I can do the easy things. So that was just a great place for me to start. So I started working actually in cardiac step down. Then I did transfer to the open heart ICU. From there, I worked in a variety of different med-surg units. I even worked at a kind of like a Unity Living Center. It was more for patients that were on ventilators, but they were more acutely ill. I worked a variety of different agency jobs. I decided to go back for my bachelor's because I just wanted to elevate my knowledge. From there, I decided that I wanted to go work in the emergency department because I figured that I would get a new set of skills. It was patients are coming in, they don't necessarily have a diagnosis, and I'm kind of seeing the patient for the first time and really trying to, put the puzzles together, I guess, in a sense like, oh, they're coming in for this, and what tests are they going to need, and what's their diagnosis. So that was all a mystery to me, and I wanted to be a part of that. After I obtained my master's from my family nurse practitioner from Fisher, I started actually, I got hired in neurology. So I'm actually, it was the first NP in this position here.
Yeah.
So we were really creating a team and building a program essentially. So I worked in patient neurology, doing consults for both general and for stroke. And I've been in this position for about 9 years because initially I didn't pick neurology. It was kind of one of those things where I applied 3 different places. They made me, have lunch with everyone, come back for multiple interviews, second interviews, and then they said, "Oh, we need someone with more experience." So so I actually didn't pick neurology. And when the HR rep called me, she said, "We still have positions available." And I said, "Okay, fine." And that's where I ended up getting the position. And I really thoroughly enjoyed it since that time. So after working a while in neurology, I decided that I wanted to go back and get my doctorate. And the impetus really for that, I was seeing a patient in the ED, and everything they were describing was depression. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. I said, we do not screen for depression in our stroke patients. So from that, I decided that I wanted to focus on depression screening, or do a depression screening protocol in acute stroke patients. And that's essentially what my project was. And I was able to develop that protocol, implement that protocol into our hospital organization and our electronic medical record. So if that wasn't enough, I decided that probably about a couple of years later, that psych, I was also seeing a lot of patients with mental illness. They have this, diagnosis called pseudo seizures or epileptiform abnormalities, non-epileptiform abnormalities. So I really wanted to learn a little bit more about the psych aspect. So I decided to go back for my psych mental health nurse. So I'm also a psych mental health nurse practitioner as well. Wow. And that's kind of where the journey has stopped for now. My passion has always been law and advocacy, and I still want to go back to law school. But I figured that but that's kind of been my journey. And advocacy has really been the blanket that has woven all these different positions together. And it's kind of led me down this path. I am very passionate about, I don't like when people are treated unfairly. I don't like the injustices of the world. But I wanted to get beyond just saying that and really do the hard work in my own community. And that's, like I said, kind of where my career has taken me.
And you're doing that full out. That's amazing. I really do think it's amazing what you're doing and how many things you're involved with. And that story, it really touched me because you really just really from the bottom up, right? You kept on educating yourself and moving along in amazing roles as well. So I love the example you are as a nurse, and I love the example you are also in social justice, right? And reforming that. I truly think that's amazing. I'm curious where you're now, right? Yeah, you're so welcome. Where you're now. What is it that that you feel right now is having your heart and your passion? You mentioned several things about human trafficking, right? Is that something that you're right now really involved in? What is it that's really touching your heart right now?
Yeah, I'm definitely very, like I said, I would honestly say I've been reading a lot of books that talk about the issues, whether it's the political determinants of health. We are as nurses, we hear a lot about the social determinants of health, but now I'm trying to understand why, if we have all this data and we know all this information, why are we not making a dent in some of these injustices? Why are, like even in my own community, why do we have the third poorest city out of 75 metropolitan in size? If we have all this information, why are we not better? So I would say that is one of the things that are driving me, essentially.
Absolutely. No. I'm curious. So if nurses who are listening right now, and please make comments, right? Please share this podcast with anybody you know, because I think a lot of nurses need to know this. But if nurses want to get in touch with you, that's always something I ask. What is the best way to get in touch with you? Okay.
So I am on Instagram. My IG is DOC_MCINTOSH, or they can email me. My email is drnurse, like Dr. Nurse, 58@gmail.com.
Awesome. So thank you for that.
You're
So
welcome.
thank you for that and everything that you're doing. I'm curious for looking into the future of nurses,
Mhm.
because I know you're a futurist. I'm curious, what do you see for nurses? What do you think is important for nurses to do? I mean, we're just coming out of 2020, right? It's just, we're
Mhm.
coming out of the year of the nurse and midwife. It's been the year, I don't know, the year of the hell, you could say, right? With everything that's been
Mhm.
going on with COVID and everything else. And there's a lot of changes and there's a lot of
Mhm.
opportunities for change as well, right? So I'm curious, I would love to hear, what do you see for
Mhm.
nurses in the next couple of years?
Well, what I see is that some of the things that I've taken away from this year is that how resilient we have been as nurses, and how we are able to weather the storm. No matter what the 2020 threw at us, we were able to overcome. So what I see is that we are going to evolve as a profession. I know that there has been a lot of discussion around, a shortage of nurses. I know that some of the colleges, especially Fisher that I went to, they are actually expanding in their numbers of people applying for nursing programs. So with that increased demand, there's also going to be a need for a demand on faculty
Mm-hmm.
to
So,
teach them. So I can definitely see that, nursing itself is going to evolve, especially with all these different, there's been a lot of discussion around healthcare disparities. I know that there's a lot of videos going around about Dr. Susan Moore. Because of these disparities, there's also a big push for increasing diversity in hospital systems.
mm-hmm.
So I see a lot of that in terms of changing. One of the biggest things that I see is that there's going to be probably a shift in, need for informatics specialists. I think, with the evolution of the technology, we're going to need more nurses in that field.
Yeah.
Another part, I think that nurses have really become entrepreneurs in this time. So they've been able to be more innovative and think, what else can I do with my skill set? For me this year, I decided that I wanted to open up an online coffee shop, and I want to do my own online scrub line. So those are some of the things that I think, okay, how else can I, expand my skills?
Yeah.
What else can I do in the meantime? So I think definitely leadership opportunities for nurses in the future, because we've shown that we've been resilient during this time, and no matter what, we have been able to, bounce back.
Love it.
But I
I
think
love
with
it.
all those things, thank you. With all those things, I definitely think that the profession itself is going to be evolve, and there's going to be a lot of opportunities. And essentially, nurses can really pick what they want to do. That it's not just about being at the bedside or even in the boardroom. There's many other opportunities for you. And I think this time and this space has really created that vision for us.
Totally, totally. And let's put the links down below as well for the coffee shop and the scrubs if you want to, because I think that's really
Okay.
cool that you're doing it. I love that. So we'll actually put those down below as well. I'm curious, moving forward into the future, what is one tip? If you had one tip for nurses, right? I'd love to actually, before we do that, before we end like that way, I would love to hear where you're going to go. Besides probably getting a law degree, maybe one of these days. But what is it for you? What are you going to focus on? Are you going to keep on focusing on human trafficking? Is there any other project you're going to work on? What is it for you?
Mm-hmm. So when I did start, last month I started my own podcast. It's called Sitting with Cece, and it's really to talk about those issues, those isms, whether that's abuse, sexism, racism, classism, but it's really to talk about controversial issues that no one really wants to talk about or talk about in the open. And I really want to create that space. So
Nice.
just whatever. So I say, you name it, we talk about it. So that's kind of like the mantra of the podcast. The next thing I'm working on doing is I want to expand my skills. I want to open up my own consulting practice to focus on advocacy as well. So I want to improve because of my skill set with developing and implementing projects and protocols. I would like to work with hospital organizations to help them improve their processes, their protocols, implementing, evidence-based, techniques or procedures into their organization. So those are one of the things that I'm very interested and passionate in doing, but really not just definitely human trafficking. And the reason why I want to focus on human trafficking too is because it is such a complex, multi-layered, issue. It's not, like I said, it's, all the vulnerabilities clash when you talk about poverty, homelessness, youth, runaways, when you talk about mental illness, when you talk about all these things, they clash, undocumented immigrants, all these different issues. They're like, these are the issues that keep people coming downstream, essentially.
Yeah.
We have to fix those problems at the root first, so we can stop the downstream effect. So, like I said, I think for me, there's so much intersectionality that I'm not going to be able to separate myself from that. But human trafficking, definitely, I can see myself doing more with that. I've spoken locally, regionally, nationally, and I would definitely like to do more international work and just collaborate with organizations. But going forward, like I said, definitely trying to use my skill set so I can do some process quality improvement or integration work for organizations.
Beautiful. Wonderful. You are a true powerhouse. So let's go for that tip. Let's go for that tip. I love to so yeah, you no, I really mean that. What your enthusiasm for nurses and for nursing, but also beyond that and tackling hard subjects, right? That is so needed right now. And yeah, the podcast Nurse Outside the Box is called for that reason as well, right? Because we need to be innovative. And we are. I think we are as nurses. And I love that. So one tip for nurses. I'd love to hear your tip. What is one tip that you would give to nurses right now?
So some of the things that I actually thought about more than one, but one of the biggest ones is that success and innovation doesn't happen in a vacuum. And it's really about, developing your teams. We don't have to work in silos, get a team, because our impact is going to go bigger and be greater. So definitely don't think that you have to do this alone. Get a team around you, share your ideas, develop your network. That's one of the things. The other big thing that I have said to myself this year is that I'm going to bet on myself. When everybody else counts you out and tells you that your idea, is not attainable and that your vision is too big, bet on yourself. Because I feel like, I don't want us to stay in the box, I guess, in a sense. For us to be outside that box, we need to think broader. We need to believe in ourselves so that we are able to get to that next step. So if you take away nothing from 2020, we know that, things can change at a drop of the hat, and we have to, if you have a vision, if you have a goal, just do it. And don't let anyone else count you out, but bet on yourself.
Beautiful. I love that. And I think you're right, because first of all, we're not in silos, and that's important, especially nowadays, right? Because even outside of nursing, right? Nursing teams develop, but also multidisciplinary. And like you said, informatics, and programs, there's so many things that need to be done there. But I really especially also love what you said, that yes, as we're doing it together, as we innovate together, then that's possible. Is the time now, right? I've been saying this to people. In crisis is often a time when great ideas are born and great movements are born, right? So yeah, I love that. Awesome. Well, go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
So I just wanted to add one more thing. While we are being innovative, I also think it's good to protect our innovation and our intellectual properties. So while we are doing those, whether it's designing or inventing a certain tool or clothing or service or project, I'm not really sure, the words aren't coming to me right now, but whether it's an intervention or whether it's a service, you definitely have to know that. Sorry, I'm losing my train of thought here.
No, but I think you're right. We need to protect, right? Because
yes.
and it's something we don't think about as nurses, because we often give, right? But at the same time, those are important. And as we have ideas, as we have innovations, we need to be acknowledged for that. And we need to, that need to be protected as well, even monetary. Sometimes that needs to be protected too. So yeah, I love the idea. So
yeah, definitely. So and bet on ourselves, and we have to invest in ourselves. We go to school and we spend all these long years acquiring all these degrees. So we have expertise too. So we have to make sure those are monetized and, like you mentioned, protected. So those are some of the things. Document your progress, your plan, and your process, your plan, and your progress. you know, whether that's in a book or whether that's in an ebook, but definitely, you know, those things.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Celia. This has been a wonderful interview. You're an awesome nurse with all the things you're doing. Guys, please, please, please go to Nurse Outside the Box, like this, share this with another nurse. Really just let's get together as nurses, because we need to absolutely do that. So thank you again, Celia. I'm going to kind of leave the last question for you, and that is 2021. Anything you want to add before we end? Anything around 2021?
No, I would just say this is the time. The time is now. So whatever, whether if you want to go to school, if you want to start that job, if you want to start that book, just do it. This is the time. And I think that's definitely what 2020 has taught us, that we have to do it now. So that's what I would recommend. Just go for it.
Do it now. Love it. Thanks, Celia, so much. And
thank you.
That's a beautiful thing to do. Let's go for it now. Thanks, guys.